um, so I was a past participant of School of Ice, I think like 4 years ago. And since then, I told Louise a couple weeks ago when I was talking to her that School of Ice definitely changed my life, that it put me on a path of doing a lot of really cool and interesting things that I would not have gone for if I hadn't done School of Ice. So I started School of Ice, and then after that, that encouraged me to apply to the Polar Track program, where I was accepted as an educator. And in 2018, I spent a month in the Swiss Alps helping a science team study the glaciers in the Swiss Alps, and it was an amazing opportunity, amazing experience. And those things keep happening of how my life has changed from doing School of Ice, because I keep teaching these assignments to different groups. This past winter in February, I got to teach some of these activities to a group of like 70 New York City teachers that are now taking School of Ice projects back to their classrooms. So yeah, it keeps expanding, and I've got to work with Louise in some other capacities as well. So I just want to express that there's lots of good stuff can come from this. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how to work on adapting your assignments. And I don't think I even, sorry, I like did not have mind prep because I was getting all of the stuff ready for other ones. I'm going to put a link in the chat room, a chat box. And this is a curriculum development worksheet. So what I would like you to do is you can open it and then save a new copy of it somewhere so that you can write your answers in this, okay? And this will be, you know, you don't have to complete everything right now, but this is just a way to organize your thoughts of how you're going to develop some adaptations. So I won't go through it right now. One of my adaptations now, because we were not able to do the Polar Detectives activity. So that is in your kits. And when you go to your agenda, you'll see under my section that I have put the Polar Detectives, which is the one that Louise was going to show you. And then I added my adaptation of that activity that I use in my classroom. So I actually took part of that and I adapted it for my earthquakes and volcanoes class that I teach. So you can look at that later. But I do want to show you, and I did give you access to this as well. Let me see if I can, I got to share my.
Hi, Lauren,
yeah.
Can we download this? I went to I can see the document.
Go to this file and then do save as, and then or save a copy, and then you want to save it to your account.
Make a copy.
Or just download it.
Make a copy, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I am going to share my screen. So this, I'm going to go through this quickly. Where is the present? Your faces are in the way. Okay, so this is an activity or a presentation that I gave at GSA one year with Louise as a co-author. And it just has some really good pictures of how I adapted the activities. But I gave you access to this in the agenda as well, so you can go back and look at it. So my position at Rutgers University is unique. I'm the director of the Geology Museum there on campus. So I work with all ages in that capacity. And I'm also a professor in the Earth and Planetary Sciences department. So my plan when I attended School of Ice was to come up with activities that would address both of those audiences, okay? So I wanted to develop or take activities from School of Ice and use them with my K-12 or my public, the general public audience. Then I also wanted to incorporate some of these into my courses that I teach, okay? Well, let me show you my adaptations first, and then we'll go back to the file. So I'm just gonna skip through. This is just showing, because this is a 12-minute talk, And you've already seen these, but you can look at this later and it shows where all of these things, you know, meet what I came up with. And I think, Russ, you might actually be in that picture on there. Yeah, there you are. From a couple years ago.
That was fun.
It was fun. Okay, so I want to get, yeah, this is what Louise said, that we don't want students to think that this is what's actually real, and we want them to do, you know, to actually know some real facts. So this is that Venn diagram one that Louise showed you. This is just a slight modification. Instead of like drawing it on a piece of paper, the way I do this so that it can be quickly redone over and over again is I drew the circles on felt, and then the cards that you do have were laminated and cut up into pieces so that they could place it on the board. So and then I made like 10 sets of them so that they're ready to go. So you can see the little kids doing this. And I have done this activity with every age. I know Louise said she's done it with a bunch, but I've done it with every age and it works well with all of them. Or you could do it the way that Louise showed you. Okay, so I wanted to show you two modifications that I came up with for the life core activity, which I love this activity. I still have my life core. When I took this course, it's on my dresser in my bedroom and it will stay there. Mine's actually the one in the middle with the ducky tape on it. So this is one modification that I came up with. So here you can see these are actual vinyl plumbing tubes. So I got them at Home Depot, and I cut them into like very short segments and put tape on one side to make like a core. And then these little things here are called Shopkins. Anyone know what Shopkins are? Does anyone have little kids that yeah, okay, with the daughter, right? Okay, so Shopkins are these little, I just found these on the floor today because my daughter was playing with them, but they are little tiny figurines that are made of like everyday objects. So this one is a roller skate. This one's like a high heel. They have ones that are food. This is $1. This is a purse, okay? So I bought a whole bunch of these, and then I use them with actually K-12, but I've done this with teachers and college kids, where I use the Shopkins as the proxies that they put into the core to tell the story about, you know, the same way you did the life core, but using these so that they were ready, and that, you know, they do it and then you can clean it up, and it's, you know, you can do it over and over again quickly. So this is just a close-up view of what the Shopkins look like. You can see there's different food items, clothes, objects. It looks like there's a saxophone there, etc. And this is what it looks like when you put the stuff inside of it. The other modification is what I call Emoji Cores. And this is one that you can do with paper, and it's very easy to do. And I do have a file for this, which I will link as well, where I actually downloaded a bunch of the emoji files and put it into a chart so that you could use it in the classroom. So they would do something like this, where they put the emojis in to represent their day or their week, etc. And it teaches the same things that you guys did with the life cores and the water bottles. So the other modification, this is one that I created. It's very similar to the previous version of ice cores, because you guys weren't at the ice core facility. You didn't get to take apart something that looked like that was real ice and had stuff buried in it. But this is my ice core, and I created this based on actual data, and what those little beads inside of them are meant to represent pollen. So the students go through and count the pollen, and they graph it, and they see what the different types of pollen represents, you know, very similar to what you did with the CO2, et cetera, so they can see that climate's changing over time. Okay, so let me stop sharing. So those were just a couple modifications and activities that I came up with after I completed School of Ice. So when you think of your curriculum, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, okay? Things to think about is, how can this benefit you? So I started off thinking about what my primary audience was. So if you go to that file that I had you open, the curriculum the curriculum development adaptation worksheet. First thing that I want you guys to think about now, and I'll give you like a minute to write down some things, okay? What are your audiences? So you want to start thinking about what are your short-term goals? What things do you want to do immediately? Because you might have all these ideas, but you're not going to be able to do it all at once. So right after we sign off today, who's the first audience that you're going to think about? So I want you to write that down in the first column or type it up. The second column, long-term. So what do you want to do eventually? This might be, I want to make a new course. I want to do, you know, more outreach. I want to create an outreach program. Whatever that is, type down your ideas. This will start helping you think about a timeline of for your plan of action. How are you going to structure when these things are completed? So would anybody like to volunteer some of their short-term goal audiences? You just unmute.
I introduced the life core to my students last week. I'm doing Zoom classes now. So
Okay.
yeah, so it was here and I showed it to them. They were very interested to see that because most of them are non-science majors. So I think this workshop helped me a lot, and all your ideas also. I was just thinking of introducing the Pollen and everything. I will get some details from you later on.
Yeah, I will
Because
post all my adaptations on the agenda so you can download the files. I have to put a few more up, but yeah. The other thing is after we're done today, I'm available to talk with any of you if you want to set up a separate Zoom or whatever to discuss your curriculum and your ideas of like and how you're going to come up with your plan of action. So when you write your plan of action, it's good to be specific. Give yourself timelines, you know, write it out like, what are you going to do this summer to get ready for the fall? What are you going to do in the fall? What are you going to do in the spring? What are you going to do after that? That's kind of how I thought about it when I wrote up my plan of action. But that's things you should think about. So who else wants to volunteer a short-term audience? Rose, go ahead.
So I already adapted the isotope and sea ice and land ice exercise from my first School of Ice workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to, since I wasn't so clear with the ice, like ice movements and ice aging part, like we did a good job, but somehow I wasn't very confident. I like to really, now I got this, I am like, I got this. I am probably gonna integrate those contents in my class, climatology class.
Right.
My long-term goal is to basically prepare a manual for my climatology class, make my own lab manual.
Right.
And then cite all these sources, and it's available to the student as the online manual for the class.
Right.
Specific to all this presentation and activities. That's what I want.
fantastic. Fantastic.
Let's do one more. What about a long-term audience? What do you?
Well, I will try to get, actually I was successful in getting some students interested in science major. One of them is now in another CUNY campus doing environmental science major. So 4 or 5 students I was able to do in the last 2 years, last 4 semesters to go to science major. Other science major students I have, one thing I just want to share with all of you, that one of our students actually became homeless at a particular point of time. But he is now a student in Brown University in the medical school. Yes. Our valedictorian this year is going to Cornell. But yes, as Rose was mentioning about the field trips and everything, yes, he did mention about the field trips and the study abroad program with us in his valedictorian speech. So that means this create an impact on the students. You know, when we are outside in the field, when we are taking them abroad and they learn things on hand. So I think, yeah, more visual, more hands-on. I mean, yes, they get more oriented rather than teaching about Alfred Wegener. Like, we have to do it. It's a part of the curriculum. But I will try to break it. And especially, I'm thinking next semester, when I do Glacier, I will do some hands-on ABC, that's a concept. I was thinking last night, yes, before I start lecturing.
So one of my long-term goals, even though I wasn't technically a participant, is to get more of those virtual field trips into my classes. Okay, so you know, all that can be something that you want to figure out because you saw it here. You know, there's so many possibilities of which way you can go, but like I said, think about the timeline. Okay, what's the most immediate, lowest hanging fruit, right? That you can immediately incorporate into your class, etc. So that brings us
I have a question. Speaking of,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I have a question about those field trips. So, Louise and Bill, are we going to be able to? Can we just use the ones that we saw? Is that going to be something possible?
Yes, absolutely. Bill, you're muted.
I have a good news for you. F-Score program get me a new GoPro.
Oh.
Didn't you guys believe? They actually purchased without me telling them. I keep telling them we need camera for our recordings. They just sent it to me.
That's nice. Louise sent me one, but she wants it back. So
yesterday with FedEx.
So Leanne, here's my goal is my wife and I are going to go up to the mountains and camp for 4 days this weekend. And then when I get back next week, I have about a week's worth of work to clean those and just make them perfect. And then we're going to upload them and they'll be up there for everybody to use. And hopefully my goal is by the end of July to have a third episode for each one up also, where it's kind of like what they did live with you, where they process it and talk about long-term implications of climate change. And then longer term, we're hoping to expand on that. We've already talked to Zoe about some ideas for some episodes for her. And after listening to Bob, I have some things written down here I'd like to talk to Bob. So all of those will be available at the icedrill.org/education website. And Louise will, I'm sure, send an email out to everybody when they go live. Yeah, we're going to try and, as much as you guys could spread those around, we're going to try and spread them around because I think it's going to be a nice resource for people in the fall.
Yeah, that's great because, you know, I don't have the time or technical ability to do the editing. I think long term, I would like to try some of those. I love the format, but in the short term.
Maybe that'll be a whole week workshop where we get together and learn how to do that because, yeah, there's a learning curve without a doubt. So it's a lot of fun.
Down the road, too, Mary is extremely supportive of, you know, ideas for developing new materials. And so I actually bought 3 GoPro cameras for IDP and plan to send them into the field with the scientists when they go and build some learning workshops around, learning labs, virtual labs around what they're doing. So yeah, I'm excited about that and made a new job for Bill here.
Yeah, there you go. Dan, if you also have, if any of you have ideas for like, you know, we're calling them virtual field labs. If you have ideas like, hey, we could go out and collect this data and kind of have kids do it. You know, the ultimate goal would be to be able to film like you and your kids out and where they film something where the camera also can measure, like, you know, Eric's was nice, but it was really kind of nice in Meredith's where you actually had to do the measuring yourself and things. So, but if you have some ideas for that, I'd you know, let me know and we can work on developing something like that too.
Also, where are you camping? Where are you camping?
The west side of the Sierra, just on this side of Lake Tahoe. So,
Luis, are the other education and outreach people, do they know that you're doing that? Because I feel like that would be really cool for the other, like I know this was specifically for School of Ice, but it'd be really nice if NSF had that for their other education and outreach divisions so that we could kind of branch out and start to see, you know, the full suite of scientific and engineering possibilities.
Yeah, I've shared it obviously with Lisa and with Mary. But one thing we didn't tell you this, but we checked these out. These 2 that you saw were built with the scientists. So all of the materials, though, when we develop or create a new lab or activity, we send it to the scientists and engineers and say, hey, look at this, make sure we got it right. So I feel really confident in all of our materials that are posted online and things like that. Bill and I are talking about maybe writing them up and getting them into the NSTA magazine so that it goes out to teachers. I'm planning on posting links to them with an explanation. And and this is something you all should join. There's an organization that grew out of the International Polar Year called Polar Educators International. You should join it. It's free. There's a Facebook page and it will be posted there. I've been involved in that since the inception of the idea of having a Polar Educators group. And so Polar Educators International, search for them on Facebook, their website. And
I'm
things
going to ask Leila in the background, can you put a link on the Padlet to Polar?
The website is Polar Educator without an S. Because when we bought the domain, the S was gone. So there's no S. Polar Educator International. And then you have to search for them on Facebook if you can find them. There's a group. They also put on international workshops every 2 years. The next one next year, we're still in the process of dates because of COVID, but it'll be in Iceland. Now, there's not travel funding, not a lot of travel funding. Sometimes we're able to get funding, but we're in the middle of writing a polar resource book that we're hoping is going to generate a lot of interest from funding groups that can help travel for teachers to these workshops. But they've been in Portugal, Montreal, Oslo, Germany, Italy, and now Iceland. So we've been putting them on for quite a few years now, and they're great. They're, a lot of scientists, a lot of activities to teach. So anyway, that's just information for you to know. And as far as the virtual field labs, getting those out to NSTA and any place else you can think of that we can send. And I'll definitely be reminding Lisa that we need to find a conduit for letting people know, because I think they're outstanding. Just the whole idea of student generated data, and especially now with all the virtual, they're filling a niche that we need. So yeah, thanks. And
can I ask you a question, Louis?
Sure.
Like when everything goes back to normal, are the university instructor eligible to apply for experience in Arctic or Antarctica? I wasn't eligible at the time. Way back when I took the class, they were targeting only high school and middle school.
Lauren went on Polar Trek, and she's a college educator. So yeah, I think so.
Okay.
You just have to have some sort of K to 12 connection.
Is there?
That's okay. Primary. That's their primary audience, but they started accepting informal educators like the year that I went. So yeah.
Is it like possible? I have an outreach, my appointment is split. I am an outreach person for extension program.
Okay. Yeah, then apply. Talk about, and that's what I did. I stressed, how I would bring stuff to both audiences and things. So
awesome.
But the last thing I want to just mention, I'm not going to go through it because we're out of time, but the rest of that worksheet is meant to kind of scaffold your plan of action, right? So go through it and jot your notes and think about, I'm going to do this. I can use these activities. I can, with slight modification, I could use this in this class, use that and just write your thoughts down so that Louise gets an amazing plan of action from you.
This is kind of, it's part of what NSF looks at, in terms of what the results of the workshop are. So, it really helps me if you can actually follow through and do that. And this year, because we actually we're able to transfer some funds from participant funds because no longer could we travel. So we had a lot of budget for travel to bring people to the workshop, but you're never allowed to just take travel funds and put them into materials funds, but NSF allowed it this year. So that's why I was able to send you kits, and I'm able to send you classroom kits as an incentive to get the things turned in too. So it's all good. Buying GoPro cameras and stuff like that. So NSF's been really great about helping out with this. So Lauren, did you have anything you wanted to?
No,
Oh,
I just
Lauren,
actually
can
found
I-
my plan of action. I'll put it on the agenda too, if you'd like to see what, not saying mine is the best. It's just, with it, like, I think Luis wants the details of like when this is going to happen, what you're going to use it for. So, don't be too vague.
my goal is to have you think it through and to see from my standpoint, what things did you like? What things look like something you can use? What things should we get rid of because nobody's using them? That type of thing. So it helps guide where the workshop goes. And those of you that have taken it before, there's a few of you that were able to do it second time. I'd be real interested in seeing, what kinds of things, because it's changed a lot, like since Rose took it. This is a almost completely different workshop. There's only a few things that are the same. So this virtual world, we tried really hard to make it active and as engaging and still build a community, because School of Ice, when you've been together for a week in person, has been built this fantastic learning community. And I'm hoping that you feel that from this group. It's very difficult in the virtual world. So we're hoping you'll be able to make some connections and what worked, what didn't work, what you'd like to see. We can't change the virtual world at this point, but
I just placed my plan of action link in the chat room that you can look at, but it's on the agenda as well.
Lauren, can I speak?
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, mine actually, this is my first time, and I'm new to this polar science, but I'm from Jackson State University, mostly close to the tropics. But my students only, our students only, in climate change, they don't know about much about polar science. So this will help me a lot. I'm a new person. Dr. Hoffman helped me to get into this. So I told her, this is my first time to introduce some of the lectures and eventually develop a new course in climate change polar science.
Yeah.
That was our intention with the Dr. Hadari. He's our system science chairman. So I spoke with him, we do together to develop a new course in polar science. So that will help the students, because they don't know anything about this polar science. So we want to develop and introduce this polar science so they can go, get like REU and other things, do more things like ice core activities and all that stuff. So that is, thank you very much. And thank
That
you.
should all go in your plan of action. That's what you just said. And like I said, feel free to contact me if you want to run ideas by.
Yeah.
A lot of work with like
Only
modeling.
the last question is the virtual field trip. The videos are pretty good. How to get that?
So they're not up yet. Bill is still.
Oh, you'll upload? Okay.
Still editing them, and when they're done, Louise will email you, and I will put the links in the agenda once they're on YouTube.
Oh, great.
I'll add them to the agenda too, because you have that link, so you can check back and
check all these, including lab activities. Very awesome. We everything good.
Yeah.
Thank you.